Hello, good morning and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to SnapLogic's Enterprise Integration Summit. In this session, we have our customer voice session on energy organizations. And featuring in this session, joining us in our session is Mark Leonard, CIO at Drax, and also Jamie Locks, VP of Integration and Middleware at Schneider Electric. Now, let's welcome Mark and present your presentation. Thank you.
Hi, thanks very much, Karen. A real privilege to be here speaking about both Drax and SnapLogic. We've only got a relatively short time, so I'll start off. I'm not going to spend much time on my bio, but basically, I'm the CIO at Drax. I look after all our IT technology across quite a diverse group. So, who is Drax? What are we? We're definitely not the character from the Marvel comic universe. We are the largest green energy provider in the UK. You'll see as I walk through the slides, in 2012, we were actually the largest polluter and producer of carbon dioxide in Europe. And we've gone through an amazing transformation, moving away from coal-fired generation to biomass from sustainable forests. We have a very defined purpose. So our purpose is to enable the UK to achieve zero carbon and a lower cost energy future. As part of that, we're building a long-term future for sustainable biomass. So we take wood from sustainable forests. So it's wood that no one else wants. So it's not wood that's used for building or furniture or anything like that. And we put that through our biomass process and we create clean energy as a result. We're also key to running the UK national grid. So in the world that we're in today, where, for a couple of weeks last year, the UK ran completely on renewable energy. One of the challenges that you have with renewable energy is basically wind power and solar power doesn't create the resistance that you need across the network. And Drax has a very important role to play helping to balance that, both with our big power station in Yorkshire and also with our hydro stations in Scotland. And then finally, we have a real goal to help our customers in our supply side business get control of their energy and consume renewable energy. We supply many large businesses and industrial companies in the UK. And then we have a really clear and exciting ambition to be carbon negative by 2030. You can see there some of our cooling towers. So I think it's always important to say that that's actually steam coming from them, not smoke. We cool and trap the water and we run it through the generators. So we have, I guess, three main things that we do. As I said, we produce 11% of the renewable energy in the UK. And that's about 6% of all the energy that's consumed. So that's the equivalent of about 6 million homes, as a way for you to try and size that and understand that. We do that through the pellet production, the biomass pellets, and we have our own plants and our own port actually in the US, in Mississippi and Louisiana, and we're in the process of potentially acquiring a very large biomass company that's based in Canada as well. And then we're a leading supplier of energy to businesses. And we have one focus on the small to medium enterprises, and we have another focus on, the very large enterprises. And I think, Drax is an incredibly exciting place to work because of the strategy and the scope, and what we're trying to do initially for the UK and then hopefully for other countries around the world as well. I guess this is an interesting chart. We've reduced our CO2 by 85% since 2012. And there are some other companies on there that we chart from a European perspective, but you can see that's a pretty incredible achievement. And we literally 2 weeks ago turned off the last 2 remaining coal generators that we had, that we only kept because the government in the UK required us to keep them, just in case of emergencies. But we finally turned them off in March. That's 3 years ahead of schedule. And we're doing some very exciting work on what we call bioenergy carbon capture and storage. So we already have the ability to do this on a small scale, and we're working very closely with the UK government this year to take that to the next step. The UK needs to capture about off the top of my head, if I remember the stat right, 80,000 tons of, or 80,000 million tons of CO2 every year. Drax will, reduce that by a significant proportion, and that's enough to turn the whole of the largest industrial area in the UK, excuse me, which we are just adjacent to, into a completely carbon neutral zone. And that's our goal and our ambition for 2030. So what's important about all of this is that IT, as we all understand, and technology is absolutely at the heart of this, whether it's running digital twins for our generators, or all the control systems, or all the supporting ancillary systems behind that, or in our customers' business for our end customers, bringing some really interesting new products to market, like managing electric vehicles. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But we were faced with a very interesting challenge in IT, which is, given the landscape, and like many other companies, of course, a whole host of heritage systems that we rely on. How could we deliver the agility and the pace of change that the strategy of the business demands? So we came up with a plan a year ago, and we called it the Drax Target Architecture. Now, that started off as being something on a bit of paper, but that is now a reality. And the target architecture is designed to allow us to deliver functionality to the business faster, more cost effectively, and with less risk. And to do that, we created and we've built 3 hubs, which is our, I guess, intellectual concepts. One of those was a data hub, and that data hub lets us examine any data independent of data warehouses, data lakes, data swamps, whatever you want to call them. And to do that, and to get to the technology that we use in the data hub, we obviously needed to create an integration hub. And core to that integration hub is SnapLogic. And we went through a very long and exhaustive selection process. But from the beginning, the technical guys and the architects fell in love with Snap because it is literally so easy to use, so quick for us to set up, and so quick to deliver that business benefit. And then on top of this all, we've created a microservices hub, and that allows us to develop functionality in the latest and the fastest way with the most modern approaches. So the key to this was really a fundamental understanding that around what should we do with our heritage systems, and we took the position that actually what typically happens between the business and IT, where, after a period of time, as the business asks for more and more functionality on top of the heritage system, you get to a place where the business says, well, we need to have a new one. And that's usually multi-million-pound, high risk, takes a very long time to achieve, and to be quite frank, you very often or very rarely get the result that you want for the business. And we have 37 heritage systems that are the key to the way we run our business. So we basically took a look at all the technology in the market. We took a look at the way people like Apple and Google and Microsoft have built their future. We also looked at what a lot of people have done with point solutions in the digital space. And we basically said, well, let's take all of those principles and we will use all of those principles to abstract functionality so that we can rely on the heritage systems to do what they do really well, and carry on producing a bill or carry on managing all the logistics of running a power station. But everywhere that we want to add improved functionality, we'll abstract this with our target architecture, and that will be our route to change in the future. We started off, with 3 hilltop projects, and these 3 hilltop projects are live, and we're up and running with the whole of our target architecture. We were able to build that, really quickly, really effectively. I have to say the team at Snap gave us great support. We've been absolutely thrilled with how well the technology has worked and how easy it's been able to set up. And that's allowed us to progress with these 3 projects. And just checking on the time here and making sure that I'm not overrunning, I will just quickly touch on them. So in energy services, this is a brand new digital proposition where we are managing fleets of electric vehicles plus any energy that the customer themselves might generate, either through solar or wind, and balancing that with the cost of energy that's available, and literally down to the level that we can tell our customer which driver has got a heavy right foot and is perhaps using more electricity driving their EV than they should do. Whether or not that EV can provide power from its battery back to the warehouse or the factory or the office block, but still be ready and have enough charge if someone needs to jump into it and go and visit a customer. And that's a really exciting space, and that's a market first, certainly for the UK. In the second one, Forest to Furnace, this is a digital twin that we've built of the entire process from when a tree gets felled all the way through coming to our pellet plant, all the conditions that the pellets are made in, all the shipping information as it travels across train lines, across the ocean, and then more train lines, and then is stored, because the amount of dust that's created in that process, or the particle size of the wood in the pellet when it's finally crushed before it gets put into the furnace itself in the generator, is incredibly important, because if the particles are too big, we create more ash. We have to stop the generator, clean everything out, or stop the conveyor belts because there's too much dust clogging things up. And this allows us to take really important decisions, even to, believe it or not, and you'll see on my final slide one of the domes that we store the pellets in at the power station, and we can control the pellets by opening different doors so we can get the optimum mix, because we're actually monitoring the mix of the pellets from different deliveries, if you can believe that. And this is a real first for us and a real first for the industry. And then finally, maybe slightly more mundane, but we have a system that basically runs the power station. You get a procurement capability on the back of that. It's not the greatest procurement system in the world, but it's really cheap. And so we've used the target architecture and SnapLogic to abstract that functionality and create a couple of microservices on top of that that are much easier and a much richer experience for our users than using the old-fashioned interface. And with that, Karen, I will hand back to you. And I think I've pretty much kept to my 15 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark, for your presentation. That was very insightful, especially your hilltop projects like Procure to Pay, Forest to Furnace, and the EVs, the electric vehicle services. So that's pretty insightful in terms of automating end-to-end processes. Now let's welcome Jamie Locks from Schneider Electric. And he'll give you his presentation around DIY citizen integrator or developer model.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity here to share a little bit about the citizens developer approach at Schneider Electric. In the next 15 minutes, I'll try to share with you a little bit about the why, the what, and the how we did it, right? And then I think we're going to break out into some Q&A, so we'll be able to answer any more specific questions at that time. First, there we go. So let me just introduce myself. So Jamie Locks, I'm the Vice President at Schneider Electric here for integration and middleware. I've got 25, 30 years in the industry. I'm currently based in France, of where we are currently in lockdown. Hopefully you guys are not all in the same boat, but maybe the picture that you see there is a little bit different than the video that you see of me. I got a little bit more, I got my COVID beard going here. So hopefully that'll be shaved off soon. moving forward into a little bit about Schneider Electric. Maybe we're one of those companies that you've never heard of, but we're a little bit everywhere. Let me go briefly into this, but then I want to move into some more of the specifics about how we're using Schneider Electric. But it's important because Schneider Electric is we're a growing technology company providing energy and automation and digital solutions to customers around the world. We're a big company. We're about 135,000 employees right now, actually, based in over 100 countries. We primarily play in the space and the markets of buildings, data centers, industry, and infrastructure. And I think what's important is that about almost 50% of our revenues today are coming from digitization. And by digitization, what I mean is connected products, edge controls, software services, analytics, AI, things like that. Why is that important? Well, because our IT organization is aligning to our company strategy, right? So today, our organization, our IT organization, of which I'm a part of, we're broken out across the globe, right? But into regions, so we have regional CIOs. We've got functions, right? So you've got, so finance, supply chain, HR, things like that. And then we have our lines of business, okay? So we've got all our business units, some of which have made acquisitions. So it's I guess the point I'm trying to get to is it's a very complicated organization. It's big. There are different levels of maturity. There are different requirements from each of these different teams. And as I don't know exactly who we have on the phone, but depending on the size and scope of your organization, there's a lot of shadow IT. And we have all kinds of solutions to support integration of middleware inside Schneider Electric. SnapLogic is one of them, but we've got a lot. And one of my roles and one of my objectives is try to simplify that approach and make the best use of what we have. Okay, so that's the overall landscape of Schneider Electric and IT, and it drove us to this citizens developer approach, this DIY we call it sometimes, to do-it-yourself approach, right? So our IT organization, with this mix of central, decentral, mature, immature, has created some challenge in the integration space. So a little bit, again, maybe a bit of a busy slide, and depending on the size and scope of your screen, I just will talk through a little bit about why did we choose this approach. So I mentioned a couple of them already. We've got disruptions in digital, right, and the alignment with our company strategy. We're seeing that across the space. We're seeing more and more SaaS solution integration providers out there, SnapLogic being one of them, who are making it easier for people to buy the services. We're seeing the product offer of these companies expanding. We're seeing more and more overlap, and this SaaS solution is creating a lot of disruption. And these silos and this shadow IT that I was referring to. We're also seeing a lot more requests for autonomy. We don't want to work with corporate, we don't want to work with global, just give us the ability to do it ourselves. And what's happening is because these solutions are more easy to find on the marketplace, and because people are coming in who have some experience already, it's enabling these silos, right? So the more that I can, and that we can as an integration team, expand the tent and bring people in, empower them if they want to be empowered, the less shadow IT, the easier it is for me to manage the end-to-end integrations of the company. We're also going through and have, as many of you probably have or are, going through an agile transformation, right? So we're getting more teams who want to follow the agile principles and practices, from daily stand-ups to stories and epics, etc. Scrum teams, Kanban, whatever solution you have in place. This big centralized model, it doesn't necessarily work that well with people going through, or teams going through, those type of transformations. And again, I mentioned as well, more and more people joining the team have experience in integration someplace else. They're digitally savvy, we would call digital natives perhaps. The generation of people coming into the companies now are much more adept at this type of solution. So how can we empower them? So all of those things going on, we said, all right, we need to look at this a little bit better. We were using SnapLogic. SnapLogic could actually connect us with a couple other companies who we talked to. How are you doing it? They were already doing some citizens and DIY. And again, we spoke with our business teams, our IT teams, and we really decided we need to make a play in this space. So we embedded in our strategy this DIY, right? And I'll show you a couple of things. It's actually a couple of the metrics that we follow, and it's a key part of what we do inside the enterprise integration and middleware team is enable this DIY, and it's one of our key metrics, and I'll share with you some specifics about that in the next slide, I believe. So if you are on this journey, you probably recognize some of the things I've talked about. If you're about to embark on this journey, a couple things and challenges you need to think about: scaling and moving people from this more traditional centralized customized operating model for integration. So starting on the left is what we've been doing for years, what, again, depending on who you are, what you may be doing today. This is more the traditional centralized model. So it says assets developed by PS, that's professional services, that's the service organization of our integration. So we can do it for you. You come to us, you provide us your requirements, you give us your project, you give us some money, and we'll go and do that for you. That's how we've traditionally operated here at Schneider Electric. So we take the request in, we take your requirements, we'll do the work ourselves, maybe we'll work with a third party, maybe we'll work with some offshore resources in India, and we have this back and forth where we take the requirements, we do this, we do the testing, more of the waterfall approach many of you might be familiar with. At the same time, as people come to us, or as we're talking about the citizens development model, we offer some other options, right? So you'll see that the first one is the centralized, the next one is what we call the close support. So close support is maybe a company that, or a team that maybe has some junior developers, maybe they have a little bit of knowledge, they're interested, but they're not really sure if they're going to be able to do it. We put them through training, right? So SnapLogic has some training, which we offer them. We go through that, and then we co-develop with them. Okay, so maybe we'll help them out. We'll answer some questions depending on how sophisticated their model is and what they're trying to build in terms of a pipeline. We'll either co-develop it with them, or we'll let them do it. We'll answer some questions. Okay, we follow them closely. We review their architecture. We review what they're doing. We point them to reusable pipelines that they can look at. The next phase, in terms of maturity, or where maybe most teams come in at that point. Okay, some teams may come into the next box over, which we call light support. This is what we're trying to do, is push people from this centralized model to this light support model. This one, it's much more autonomous. Okay, we're there, we provide some support to them, we maybe answer a few questions, but they're really doing most of the development themselves. Okay, usually teams who are in this space have done a few pipelines already, or they've had some experience. And then ultimately, the fourth model that we have is pushing people furthest to the right, which is what we call the autonomous mode. It's where we want to push most people and most teams. And right now, we have a balance across this. Most of our teams are in this light support mode, but we do have some teams on the edges as well, and we can talk a little bit more about that in the Q&A if we have some time. A little bit about how long this took. So it took us about a quarter to stand this up, but quite frankly, it took us about a year to really get things moving. Okay, so a few numbers for you. For instance, I just checked these numbers today. In Q1 of this year, we have about, I think it's 19 stories. Let me back up. In 2020, overall, all of last year, we went live with 22 stories in and developed by DIY or citizens integrators. 22 stories went live using SnapLogic in all of 2020. Just in Q1, year to date, we have 19 live, and we're probably going to pass all that we did in 2020. So we're really seeing acceleration happening. So standing it up, easy, getting traction, and I'll talk a little bit about how maybe you can get some traction if we have a little bit of time at the end. I'm watching my time, but really we're seeing a huge acceleration in this. We did get some pushback, and you should expect some pushback. We had some teams, believe it or not, who said, let's go, we want to go fast. We had some teams who thought that when we introduced this to them, they thought we were asking them to do our job. Hey, wait a minute, we don't want to do this. We want you guys to do the work for us. So it's really an approach that we cater based on who we're talking to. I think the important thing, if you're about to step in this journey, is how do you govern this, right? How do you make sure we've got the right security, we're not wasting effort, how do you manage support, things like that, which if you go down this DIY effort, it is something that you need to think about. We start simple, and we've accelerated, and we've built these things in place. At Schneider Electric, we use Office 365, so we use Microsoft Teams. And in this Teams, we actually have different channels with which we provide support. We've got Yammer and sort of a center of excellence where we allow people to ask questions to the community. We do code reviews, architecture reviews, right? And before anything goes to production, we make sure that it goes through review with our lead architect to make sure that it's following best practice, there are no security holes and things like that. So we do have some controls in place, but again, as you see people move into that autonomous mode and more of that gold or rapid approvals as we get through, there's really very little overhead that's involved to maintain and govern this. Okay, so things are going quite well for us here at Schneider Electric in that space. I wanted to just share a couple things if they haven't come through and been obvious so far as to why we're doing this. Okay, what are the benefits that we've actually seen today? So today, one of the clear, or there's a couple on this slide, there's some that even go beyond this, but let's just focus on these four for just a minute. The first is speed to market. And by market, we're talking about internal deployment for us. So we're using SnapLogic for internal integrations in middleware today. And our citizens integrators, being empowered for them to be able to do their own prototypes has really enabled them to be delivering things much more quickly to the business and provide things directly to impact what they need to do. Before, again, we had a lot of handoffs, we had time zones, depending on how your team is organized. We have a big offshore component in India, and particularly when you're getting into North and South America, there's a lot of time and delays. The ability for them to deliver is much better now with this DIY approach. Secondly, again, is the cost savings. So less handoffs, sure. Again, we had many of our, those 22 stories that went live last year, we would have paid some third party to do all that work. It would have been back and forth. So we've got savings tied to that. We estimate a couple €100,000 actually in savings that we would have lost or spent with an external party that we now can manage internally. And don't underestimate the reduction of shadow ID and all the overhead and the drag cost that comes with. The more that you empower people and put them onto SnapLogic as the tool of choice for integration, the less of these other pop-ups that you have, the less of the overhead, the conversations, the related costs, and so on and so forth. The third piece is about productivity, right? So productivity, obviously, with faster development, with less overhead, and the reusability, right? So the more pipelines that we build, the more knowledge that we have, the quicker we develop, the more reusable components and pipelines that we have across different teams, the knowledge sharing, et cetera. It's really been tremendous. And the last thing, again, and we've got some really good empowerment in our teams, is the satisfaction, the word of mouth, the successful use cases that we've seen, and the fact that we're really seeing this accelerate has just been tremendous. So the journey's been fun. If anybody has any questions, we're about to move into the Q&A session, so please ask it then, or reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd be more than happy to connect with you, if so be it. So thank you very much for this time to share what we've done here, and I'll hand it back to our moderator, and I think we're going to move into Q&A if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you so much, Jamie. Thank you for this great presentation. And I love looking at the DIY model every single time because it tells a really good path to get, citizen developers to automate their own, applications, integrations. So that's perfect. All right, so
Great.
Let's open up for our panel session with us, joining us, Jamie and Mark. So if you have any questions to our presenters today in this session, please put them in the chat, in the Q&A chat, and we'll answer them. So there are a few. So there's one that came in. Do you have a common pipeline design pattern the citizen integrators have to follow? And if so, are there any quality reviews, any required test case implementations? I believe that's for you, Jamie. Sure.
So we actually have so the short answer is yes. Again, there's a lot of specifics in there. So we have an entire playbook that we use for all of our integration inside Schneider Electric integration and middleware. So sometimes, I know this is a SnapLogic session, but not everything we do in the companies with SnapLogic. But all of the use cases and patterns that we drive and use SnapLogic for, they're clearly documented, and we have requirements, standards, and so on and so forth. As I said, when we go into the DIY space, it's really important that you set up that governance and review. It's why most teams don't start off at autonomous, and autonomous doesn't mean green light and no review at all. But typically those people who are in that mode have either worked very closely with us, we have really good trust with them, right? We still do a code review push before production. Okay, so there's a code review or an architecture review. But again, some of these teams we've been working with now for quite some time, they may have even been part of this team one point and then they moved into someplace else in the organization. So we have a very strict set of standards for security, for certification, and things like that. That has to be baked into your governance. So yes, we do that.
And a follow-up question to it, as part of these standards, are pipeline errors handled by the individual citizen developers?
So there's a couple different ways. So we have a central team, which is the run and operate of the platform. Okay, so there will be tickets and such like that may come if it's a SnapLogic error or some monitoring or something that happens centrally, it may be here. Typically, we drive all the support to the citizens. Okay, so again, it depends on the model and how was one of our checklists. So we have a pretty rigorous process that may seem cumbersome at first. As a matter of fact, I was just having this conversation recently with one of the citizens. But after you do it one or two times, it's actually quite easy. And one of them is, how do we ensure support going forward? So depending on the type of error, if it's a pipeline error or the business user data was wrong, right, that'll go to the citizen developer team for support. But if it's something more with the platform or an error where it's not sure, the central team will take it, and then we may redirect it to the person who built the pipeline to troubleshoot if it's not something on the
okay. So it's really dependent on the organization, on the standards, on the guidelines before rolling out to the citizen developers, just so that they follow those rules.
Yep.
Great. So another question we have, and this is first for Mark, and then we can open it up to for Jamie. How has the energy industry evolved in the past few years, and how have your organizations been kind of getting ahead of those trends within in the energy industry?
Yeah, I think, Karen, the way that I would try and illustrate that for everyone is, if we went back, I can't believe it's 20 years, but if we went back 20 years to the dot-com boom and what happened with telecoms, I think that's what's happening in the energy industry today. So we're moving from, a switched environment to, a software-driven environment, and where digital twins, for example, can deliver huge benefits, huge savings. In the legacy environment, maintaining a power station, if I think, I think of it in those terms, is pretty much, you take a generator down for a quarter or even 6 months to do all the maintenance work on it. With a digital twin, you can turn that into a week. So the savings are vast and the benefits are vast. Equally, in what's been a very, legacy feel in terms of how you get billed, how you consume energy. The world is changing very rapidly, certainly in the UK and Europe. We have many customers, and this goes not just in the B2B world, but in the consumer world as well, who may generate their own power in some shape or form. And they want a solution that, gives them the best value and helps them consume energy at the lowest cost. So I think just a huge impact all round. And, we're also highly regulated. So the government is constantly asking for things to be made better. And the pace of change doesn't leave you any alternative. And that's why you need to employ technologies like SnapLogic to just be able to deliver that speed of change.
See, sounds like there are different entities that demand different things, government entities, how consumers and businesses consume energy as well, and then how you accelerate and get ahead of the renewable energy, the trend. And Jamie, what about Schneider Electric?
Sorry, take myself off mute. It makes it a little better. So similar to what Mark was saying, I think, and again, more and more, we're seeing more and more companies with CO2 neutral targets, right? Schneider Electric, as I mentioned as well, we're moving more and more in the software space. How can people manage their energy efficiency, right? How, factories, building management systems, things like this. As we're seeing the energy, it's a commodity, but at the same time, it's something that it's becoming more and more ubiquitous and something that we really need to manage. It's creating massive amounts of data, right? So before, fuses would just be something in the closet, but now we're connecting those fuses so that we can see how much energy is passing through them. How can you, even my own home here in France, I can now see on my phone exactly what's being consumed, what my peak hours are, things like that. That's generating data. It's generating opportunities for us to be more efficient with that. And of course, inside the company, now we're starting to connect the IoT world to what's inside. And in Schneider and in other companies, this disruption is creating a lot more opportunities for us to make data visible, integrate data, expose APIs that people can consume and turn into other revenue streams, other opportunities. So we're just seeing massive speed changing in the marketplace, to some of the points that Mark had said. And really, you need solutions, integration solutions being one of them, that are adaptable, that are easy to use, that are flexible, that are innovating as well. We just simply can't be satisfied with the waterfall legacy approach to the way integration happened in the past. We need something agile, flexible, which can keep pace with what we're seeing happen in this market.
Mm-hmm. And as you guys mentioned, integration, right? The need for integration to keep up and accelerate in the industry. What are some of the best practices and considerations you guys had when you were looking at evaluating an integration platform, prior to selecting SnapLogic?
So, if you, sorry, I've jumped in, Jamie. Apologies.
No, go ahead. I think you're more recent in terms of your decision, so I'll let you go first and compliment anything. Go ahead.
Okay, so I think what we looked for, Karen, was we were very clear. We were looking for ease of use, and there's a very simple reason for that, because you can employ technologies, and we had to drag some of our more technical people away from some of your competitors that still give them the engineering look and feel that they're used to and that they love. But as Jamie said, if you take this to the logical extension, you can create citizen developers, right? We're not as far on that journey. But for us, we wanted the solution to be easy to use and up and running as quickly as possible, because the opportunity cost or the cost of delay of trying to implement something else, was much more significant than maybe going for something that the engineers felt suited every scenario. Of course, we looked at the reliability, we looked at the scalability, all of those good things. We went through a very tough process. The other thing that we really liked about Snap was we've moved to what we call, very much, a pattern approach. So instead of allowing people to select from that great smorgasbord of options and how should we build an app, or how should we deliver a solution, or how should we query this data or write algorithms, we basically give people patterns. We've reduced everything to a small number of patterns for maximum reusability and speed. For us, everything is about getting that functionality to the business as quickly as we can. So those were our key thoughts, but I'll hand back to Jamie.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the main ones. I guess the only ones that we look at, we actually can. SnapLogic is what we call one of our crown jewels in terms of our security. It's a hypercritical platform for our internal company. So security is key. And we have a lot of legacy, so we needed something that would work well with all of our legacy, right? On-prem solutions. So we've got Groundplex and Cloudplex, and something that provided us that flexibility across the board, and also a company that's innovating, right? So I've been real happy with some of the things that I've seen coming from SnapLogic and the companies that aren't static in terms of your AI and ML and some of the other things that you guys have coming up. Again, that's the other reason why we enjoy working with a company like this, and why we would and have chosen SnapLogic and continue to work with you going forward.
I have two more questions before we close off the panel session. So there is a question on for you, Jamie. Is there a centralized DevOps CI/CD framework which you use to handle all individual SnapLogic integration pipelines?
So yeah, I could. The team that we have in place, again, we do have a CI/CD DevOps process in place today. To be honest with you, me personally, I don't get involved in all of the details, but we do have that in place. And again, that's one of the controls that you have in place. It's why the citizens piece does get a little bit tricky sometimes, because we don't allow citizens to push things to production themselves. So we have a central team which manages that. So the short answer to that is yes, we do. But if you ask me the exact specifics and exactly how we're doing it all in the detail that maybe somebody's asking, if you want, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'll get you the answer, but I can't answer it here right now.
Okay, thanks. All right. So before we close off the panel, last question for both of you. The audience always love tips, tricks, and any critical advice, best practices. So any tips that you can provide to the audience in using SnapLogic? Maybe some pitfalls they should watch out before embarking into an integration platform?
Sure. Mark, I'll take this one first and hand it over to you, maybe.
Yeah.
So for me, a couple things I'd say. One is start simple. Start simple. Grab your low-hanging fruit. Find the customers. Again, I'm thinking through DIY, but it could be anything. Find the areas where you can make a good use case and success story internally. Word of mouth does wonders, right? So prove success, prove value. Use that as your internal marketing tool, or to before you go into your next financial review cycle where you need to ask for a budget. But reusability as well. I think the use cases, the patterns that Mark was referring to is huge for us. So, all right, here's the type of pattern. You're doing this to this. Establish those so that people don't need to recreate those each time, and shorten the time, and look at shortening that time to deliver, right? Go into a more iterative process. Don't over-engineer things and make it too complicated. But those are some of the quick things that come to mind that we've done and have had great success with here at Schneider. Mark?
Yeah, I mean, I guess Jamie, I think that's exactly what we've done. I think coming to this from maybe a slightly different angle. Jamie's organization is obviously very practiced at this. I think one of the lessons learned that we've taken away is what I call mindset and approach and skills. So the skills are easy, we engaged with Snap to get everyone that we needed to get trained. But I think mindset and approach are something that IT folk sometimes take longer to get hold of. So this is such a different way of doing things. This presents opportunities to do things, much more quickly, and people need time to adjust to that. And so we spent quite a bit of time actually doing a cultural piece around this, because we're doing integration in a very different way now, at speed, and people have to think about it differently. So that would be, if you're just starting on the journey and really using the technical capability that's on offer in the best way possible, then I would guess you'd come up against this as something you need to think about.
Very good advice. Thank you so much, Jamie and Mark, in terms of joining us and sharing your best practices and your journey using SnapLogic. So thank you so much, and I thank you on behalf of the audience as well. So what we have up next in our next session is our health and pharma voice of customer organizations, and with my colleague Dhananjay Papai from product marketing, he'll be driving and leading the session. So we'll take about a 10-minute break before we join back and listen into the Health and Pharma Voice of Customer sessions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.